What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. um, Got some kind of bad news today. I think I'm going to stop or at least pull back my investing on Groundfloor. A couple of things happened on the platform that are, I don't know, to me, were relatively disturbing, and they are making it so the site's not going to work for me the way that I wanted it to anymore. And so, if you remember, if you've been watching, I invest with the LROs, which are just these, where you can invest in the individual properties. If you watch my channel regularly, that's all I'm about, right? We're looking at fractional real estate investing. We're not trying to invest in REITs. I'm not trying to invest in funds. I want to be able to look at the individual property, make a decision on that basis. And on ground floor, it's an individual mortgage, but backed by a single property. Um, that way I can use my due diligence skills and have a better idea of what I'm doing as far as the property goes, and not have to pay fees that I don't understand, like that are at the fund level, and not worry about, um, having to track what's going on in a whole big portfolio. I can just look at each individual, um, interest that I have. And here they're called LROs. Well, a couple of days ago, I was trying to I've had more. I started noticing I was getting more payoffs than usual. Didn't really think much of it. Got in here to try to reinvest some of the funds, and I got this message. Okay, now you can only invest up to $100 in each LRO. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem. I mean, I guess some of them I'm already. My average was bumping up a little bit higher than 100, but not very much. Um, and but with plans to put significantly more capital on here as time goes on, the fact that they'll limit that at any point in time is disturbing. Um, and then so I was trying to figure out, well, and then I started to look at my repayments, and I got a crazy number of repayments. So up until probably 3 days ago, I think I had 40 total, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit more. And now all of a sudden, 120, 131 of these LROs repaid, most of which were yesterday and today. Some of them I had only bought, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And so, it leaves me, yeah, I only have 69 um, current LROs where I had like 123. And if you remember, my goal on this platform was to get very wide diversification. Um, that's sort of ruined by, when they come in here and will just take away, half the loans. And so, and you can see, like, when I'm trying to reinvest, there's only maybe less than 20 LROs available to reinvest in, right? So I ended up getting about $5,000 in capital back, just sitting in cash. I just took it off the platform because there wasn't enough space for me to you know put it on here, and also, where they're limiting what I can put on each, it limits my ability to, over time, put a quite a bit on. I did message them and I asked, what's going on? Can I get rid of that cap? Is there anything I can do? And this is actually what bothers me the most about what's happening. So, they didn't really say, there's nowhere did they tell us why this was happening, right? And actually, there was a little bubble that popped up when you first entered that said something like, "Oh, lots of people are trying to invest, so we've limited it," which wasn't exactly true. Like, it's kind of true. They had a bond issue earlier, so like they issued bonds, which means they raised a bunch of money. And I'm gonna get into what I think is going on. I'm not certain, but looking at the documents, this is what I think is happening. But so they issued money, right? They issued these bonds, raised money, used that money to pay out several of the LROs. So basically, they used it to pay us off and move that obligation into the bond. Um, and then because they did that to a lot of people. Well, so then everybody who got paid off from their LROs wants to reinvest, and they don't have enough options for us all to reinvest. So they limited it, and that's why they did the $100 limit. First, they did a $200 limit, and then they bumped it down to $100. Um, and so, if they're going to do that anytime that and so what is this bond issue? I'm not positive. I think what they're doing is they're basically moving those loans into the flywheel portfolio. I'm not 100% sure of this, but like, so I'm looking, this is the, their description, their page that like compares the flywheel portfolio to the LROs. It already has when the flywheel portfolio came out, and if you're not familiar with what that is, it is a REIT, or it actually might be a collection of REITs from the description of it, but it's either a REIT or an interest in multiple REITs that are, managed by Groundfloor. They're a collection of all of the, of the mortgages and notes that Groundfloor lends on, including ones in the LROs. Um, and so basically, they charge a fee for this and to provide you with this diversified portfolio of these. Um, but then when you actually look at it, it's not as diversified as you might want it to be. Oh, where did I see this? Uh, so you can actually look at what's the portfolio. And it'll tell you, like 18% is in this portfolio note, right? And all these others make up a smaller piece of it, but some of them, like if you just take these top ones, they actually make a bigger piece than I expected because they talk about it as being 200 to 400 individual short-term secured loans in the portfolio. Well, it doesn't look like that's really accurate just yet. But anyway, when they do this comparison, they're trying to set it up. They clearly want to move people into the flywheel portfolio. They do charge a fee for you to be in there, which is, so I think they make a little bit more money off of it. I think it makes it easier to invest, right? I mean, there's less people like us in the world that are really trying to do our due diligence on every single property and really get in there, and more people that just want to, pick one thing and put their money in it. Which reminds me, please like and subscribe. And every time I say due diligence, that's what triggers this. Whenever I say it, it reminds me, because in the description to this video, I have a link to all the sites that I currently invest in fractional real estate on. Uh, but please do your own due diligence on all of those platforms. You want to make sure, just because I invest in there doesn't mean that you should. And you can see, like, I'm changing my mind on this one. It's happened pretty regularly. I'll still leave it up because I still have some money in there. Uh, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I think about for the future for this. But yeah, and there's also a link in that description to the Discord that I have set up for fractional real estate investors to just get together and talk to each other. We've passed, I think, 80 members now. There was a good discussion about the ground floor what was going on today. And talking to other people is what helped me figure out, what I think is happening. And so I think that there's just a huge benefit for us to get together and do that. So, please do click on the description to this video and check that out. You can also, if you're wondering about the different options on ground floor, I do have a playlist for these, so you can look at those as well. But so anyway, I think that it makes sense for them as a company to want to push the flywheel portfolio. But what I'm worried is they're really doing it at the expense of us LRO investors. And so the reason that I think this is what they're doing, when you look at their circular, um, let's see. So there's a couple different things that happen. But when you look at the circular that they have on this, they have this Ground Floor Loans 1 and Ground Floor Loans 2 LLC. These are what come up on a different page that is just related to the Flywheel portfolio when you click on the offering circular for that. So I think that these are what you're actually investing in when you're buying that portfolio. And so you can see, like, last year is when they did their first issuance of bonds. And they talked about it last year, and they had, this is, let's see, I'm pretty sure, yeah, this one is set up as a REIT. They raised 75 million. They, I think they basically, what they did is they raised that money and then they used it to buy up a bunch of, they used it to buy up a bunch of the notes, and then that's the portfolio that you're buying into. I think that's what happened. I don't know. I'm actually not 100% sure um, when they're talking about issuing a bond where that comes in. But I'm fairly certain that this entity here is the flywheel portfolio. Um, and then this one, then they did a second one that just happened in March of this year, where they went and raised more money again. The reason I think it's related to this is one of the one of the calls that I was on with them, one of the webinars, they referred to this same amount of money when they were talking about issuing bonds. Now it could be something completely different, and I'm just missing it. But in any case, they issued bonds, raised money, and then just basically paid us out early on a whole bunch of loans. And it's like, well, okay, it's not. I'm sure their documents probably said that they're allowed to do that, right? I mean, like, it's not surprising that they can do that to us. Um, why can't I get rid of this here? Let me just close that page. Uh, but it makes it so I can't really implement the strategy that I want to, right? Like, if at any point in time they can just liquidate a third of my portfolio, which is what happened in the last 3 days. It was actually even a little bit more than that because I already started to reinvest some before I realized this was such a problem. Um, it makes it so I can't, the goal that I was trying to do is create a large diversified portfolio with, I'd gotten up to like 123 or 125 maybe LROs at one point. I was hoping to maybe get to um, somewhere around 200 on a rolling basis, right? And so as ones pay out, new ones come in. But if you look, my open loans right now are all the way down to 69. I mean, this is like half of what it was, or a little, just a little bit more than half of what it was a week or two ago. And the paid off ones are just significantly, and it's great. Like I got paid off. I made the money that I was promised to, right? Only it was a shorter time period. So, but I got paid the interest rate that I was expecting and everything. So it's not that they did something horrible. But if I wanted to, two things. One, if I really want to have a very diverse portfolio, I can't count on being able to maintain that if they're going to, because it took me 6 or 7 months to get up to the 120 loans, and I was hoping to keep growing that. And so if they're going to just come and pay off huge swaths of loans at a time, um, it ruins my opportunity to have that sort of diversification. But then the other aspect of it is, if then they also go and limit the amount I can repurchase, uh, I'd be sitting here just with idle cash. And I don't have a ton of money on this platform, right? I mean, I put $15,000 on here originally, over a month or two. I like spread that out. And then it took a long time to average that into a whole bunch of loans. Um, and so like if I wanted to put a lot of money on here, I would have to, I wouldn't be able to do it for one because it's limited. Now they have said that this, limiting these investments, it doesn't say it here, I don't think, but I think in the note that they sent me, that's the flywheel one. Let's see. Let's go here. Yeah, it doesn't say it there, but I think in this note is where they had said, uh, they just think it's going to be a maximum of 2 weeks, right? But so, like, okay, so I'd have money just sitting here for 2 weeks, earning no return. Not the end of the world. But if this happens quite often, and it's making it so I can't reinvest all the money, so I have cash sitting, and they're wiping out half of my diversification at any given time. It just makes it a much less compelling platform than it was originally. And to do this, and the thing that was really aggravating is when you first log in, it says, "Ooh, lots of people are buying right now." So that's why we're limiting you, right? They didn't. It's really where this is sort of like manufactured demand in a certain way, right? And so, if I hadn't asked support, I wouldn't have gotten um that response. And then what is even a little bit more aggravating is I got, let's see. Actually, oh, maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought that I got responses from two different people, but they were exactly the same. But maybe I'm confused about that because I don't see the other one right now. Which makes sense, right? Because they're probably just given this, canned thing to tell us. But it's just frustrating. Now, if I was talking to somebody in the Discord, and they only put $10 in each one at a time anyway. And if you're just using this, if you're building a smaller portfolio initially, dollar wise, this wouldn't be a big problem, right? Like, because you wouldn't have the problem of not being able to reinvest right away, right? You could spread that out and you could get it all working again in a relatively short period of time. But you still have that aspect of you just get your diversification wiped out, right? But at the same time, on the flip side, and this is kind of a weird thing to think about, is if they're doing what I think they're just taking these and moving them into that portfolio, or they're doing something similar to that, well, then it's a new source of liquidity to pay us off. And maybe some of these extended ones that got paid off, maybe I'm glad they got paid off, right? Maybe they would have been a problem. And so, it's a weird thing to think about, but if you had a big portfolio of loans and you had some dogs in there and they took those ones away from you, which wasn't the case for me. I mean, I had some extended ones, but I didn't have any, still haven't had any defaulted ones. Um, but I don't know. I mean, so I think I'm going to reinvest what I have on here. What I left a couple $100 because it looks like I can spread it out. And as depending on how rapidly it repays, I might just leave the rest of what I have and just leave it at that. But I'm definitely not adding any more to this platform. Um, and depending on how this goes, it might make me take more off because the way that I look at investing, I'm just never going to be buying into this flywheel portfolio. Like I don't like that it's too difficult to figure out what I'm actually getting when I invest in this. Um, and to be able to track it on any sort of regular basis and pay attention to what my portfolio is, it's just not really possible. Um, I am curious, anybody else who's noticed this, is this changing your mind on the platform? Um, is it is it going to make you move to the flywheel portfolio, or are you just going to not invest on the platform at all, or are you just going to let it ride what you have on here? I'm curious what your reactions to are, or what your reactions are to this. Um, and I also would like to know if where if you pull dollars off of here, where do they go, right? Because the I was seeing this platform as a significantly different opportunity than Lofty. It is also different from Mogul, although the returns are a little bit closer and the timing is a little bit more similar, right? Like they were both sort of doing, I'm a little bit more set it and forget it money, although on Groundfloor I was having to reinvest pretty regularly, but it wasn't, it's not the active trading that Lofty is. So I know there's the Arrived private credit fund, but again, I think that that's very much comparable to just what the Flywheel portfolio is, so I won't be doing that. Um, I don't know. I'm really interested. I like investing in debt. It's what, the capital that I have that's not on fractional sites is mostly in private mortgages where, bought a property all cash, sold it and held the mortgage. And so I think debt investing is one of the more appealing types of investing to me. I think there's a lot of advantages to it. So I'm pretty disappointed that my favorite debt investing platform is doing, did what they did. And I don't know, I'm not really, I don't know if it was poor planning or if they didn't really think that this was going to aggravate a lot of us. But I mean, most of the people that I talked to today about this issue were not happy about it. So I'm curious, does it kind of hurt your faith in this platform? Um, or if you think, oh, this happened, it's not going to happen again, which I just don't think that's true because there was one other time where I had a bunch of payoffs around the same time, and they had mentioned something about institutional capital coming in. So this is a tiny Mountain Dew can. I'm not a giant. This is like a little tiny one, so don't get scared that this is a giant talking to you. Um, I think that that's really all I wanted to talk about this, but I am curious. I know we had a little bit of a discussion in the Discord already. I am curious where people are going to move money to if they move it out of here. Um, Please don't put it in the Universal Lending DAO if you see that on Lofty. I guess we haven't talked about that in a long time. Um, I try to never actually give advice, right? Like if you want to do that, fine. Do your own due diligence on it. But it is probably my worst investment on that platform so far. Um, the reason that comes to mind though is one of the things I've thought about is well, maybe on some of the properties I own on Lofty, maybe I'll propose capital calls if they need one, and I'll just lend my funds on there, and you know, that would be a way to get a debt return. Although, you know, they're not set up as actual mortgages, so you don't have the same sorts of protections. But typically we're getting sort of higher interest rates on average on those. So I don't know. That's one thought that I had, but I'm interested what else other people are doing. If you know of other platforms that are similar to Ground Floor, one, shame on you for not sharing it with me already, because I always want to hear about other platforms you guys are investing on. But two, please just let me know because you know, we'll be looking for somewhere else to experiment with. I really thought I had, you know, three or four spots where I was pretty happy with. Um, I don't know, maybe this money ends up going into DAX on Saul's lot, right? Because that's sort of a similar time frame that they're outstanding. And even though those aren't mortgages, they have a very debt-like quality. Let me think about that. Maybe that's where it's going to go, but obviously that site's very new. There's not a lot of volume on there yet, so you know, at the moment, I'd still get more diversification on ground floor. But one of the things that I'm doing when I'm evaluating these platforms is trying to think about them for the future when I am going to put, you know, a large portion of my net worth on it. Like where would I actually want it to be? Um, versus like, okay, yeah, this does, you know, if you're putting less than 100 in each of the LROs, then yeah, I think that it can work perfectly fine. But as soon as you start to really build a portfolio on here, you know, a certain significant amount of capital, then all of a sudden it doesn't work for you. Um, and who knows? I mean, maybe they'll plan the next capital raise better, and this won't happen. I know other people are taking money off right now too, so I'm sure they're going to see that people are voting with their dollars right now that this was a poor decision. But one of the things is I don't know how much they care, right? I don't know if well, they've talked a couple different times about institutional capital coming in, and maybe you know, maybe they're making more money, you know, servicing bigger people than they are us retail investors. You know, I don't know. You know, bigger, really, actually bigger investors like institutions, more so than individuals on their platform. Really not sure. You know, it's tough to understand. Especially, you know, they have terrible. Um, you know, they didn't really tell us anything, explain it very well at all. Like, okay, there's a bond issue, and like, what does that mean? So I had to guess. You know, and like I said, I mean, I could be completely wrong about what they're actually doing, but regardless of what they're doing, it's really ruining the LRO experience for me. Uh, so I don't know. I think I've beat that to death. Please do tickle the like button if you haven't already. And until next time, that's everything. Yeah. Until next time, I will keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.